I was standing in my foyer, my hand hovering over the door knob, checking my reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. I looked tired. Not the kind of tired that a good night's sleep fixes, but the deep, bone-weary exhaustion that comes from years of trying to keep the peace. I adjusted my coat, took a breath, and reached for the handle. I was heading to my sister Vanessa's house for what she called a reconciliation brunch. Just us sisters, she said. A fresh start. But before I could turn the lock, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a text from her asking if I was on my way. Instead, the screen lit up with a message from Marcus, our family's estate attorney. 3 words, all capital letters. Call me now. Do not go there. I froze. The urgency in those words cut through the morning silence like a siren. My thumb hovered over the screen for a split second before I hit dial. Marcus answered before the first ring could even finish. Catherine. Listen to me very carefully, he said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that made the hair on my arm stand up. Do not go to that house. Do not eat anything she gives you. Lock your door right now. I'm coming over. That was the moment the floor dropped out of my life. I froze in my own hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. Before I tell you what he showed me, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far this story travels. 20 minutes later, Marcus arrived. He didn't even bother with an umbrella, just marched up my walkway in the freezing rain, clutching a thick plastic folder against his chest like it contained nuclear codes. When I opened the door, he didn't offer a hug or a greeting. He just walked past me. I threw the wet file onto my kitchen island and turned to lock the deadbolt behind him. Sit down. Catherine, he said. His voice had the flat, professional cadence he usually reserved for reading wills. What I'm about to show you is going to hurt. But I need you to read it like an accountant, not a sister. Can you do that? I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I pulled the chair out and sat. The folder was heavy. I flipped it open. The first page wasn't an invitation or a letter. It was a court filing, an ex parte emergency petition for conservatorship of the person and estate. My eyes scanned the legal jargon, picking out the words that mattered. Respondent Catherine Blackwood. Petitioner Vanessa and Adrian Sterling. Reason for filing acute manic psychotic break. Danger to self and assets. Immediate suspension of rights required. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. Sharp and hysterical. But I swallowed it down. They're saying I'm crazy, I asked, my voice deadly calm. Not just crazy, Marcus corrected, pointing to the second tab. Incapacitated. Look at the evidence. I turned the page. It was a photo of me taken 2 months ago, looking disheveled, my eyes wide, my dress stained with what looked like blood underneath. The caption read, Respondent exhibiting violent erratic behavior at parent's funeral. I stared at the photo and suddenly the memory snapped into focus like a balance sheet. Finally reconciling. The funeral I had worn my mother's vintage white silk dress. I had been standing by the gravesite, holding it together. When Vanessa had stumbled, she had lunged forward, supposedly tripping on the grass, and emptied an entire glass of Cabernet Sauvignon down the front of me. I remembered the cold shock of the wine soaking into the silk. I remembered Vanessa screaming, not in apology, but in horror. Oh my God. Catherine, you're losing it. You can't even hold a glass. Why are you shaking? Someone help her. I hadn't been shaking. I hadn't been holding a glass. She had thrown it on me. But in that moment, with everyone turning to look, with the red stain spreading like a gunshot wound across my chest, I looked unhinged. She hadn't been clumsy. She had been staging a crime scene. She planned this. I whispered. The wine. The screaming. She was building a portfolio. I flipped through the rest. Affidavit from concerned friends I had never met. A log of missed appointments that Adrian must have deleted from my cloud calendar. It was a masterpiece of fiction. They weren't just trying to take control. They were trying to delete my personhood. Why, I asked. Looking up at Marcus. Why go this far? I pay her credit card bills. I pay the property taxes on the manor. Why destroy the golden goose? Marcus didn't say a word. He just slid a single sheet of paper across the granite counter. It was a property appraisal for Blackwood Manor. 60 million. 5 million. The number sat there bold and black. I stared at it. I had been paying $45. 000 a year in property taxes to keep that house in the family. Treating it like a heritage site. A liability I was honored to carry. Vanessa didn't see a home. She saw a lottery ticket. She saw $14 million that was currently locked in a trust she couldn't access unless the trustee was declared incompetent. The coldness that washed over me then wasn't fear. It was the icy clinical detachment I felt when I found a discrepancy in a client's ledger. This wasn't a family tragedy. It was a fraud case. And I was the auditor. I closed the folder. My hands were steady. Okay, I said. They want a crazy sister. They're going to get a forensic investigation instead. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed with the familiar blue light of my workspace. Usually a place of order and logic. But today, the first thing that popped up wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a notification from social media. Vanessa Sterling is live. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it would only poison me. But I needed to know the narrative before I could dismantle it. I clicked. The video filled the screen. Vanessa was sitting in her sun-drenched living room. The perfect picture of distressed elegance. She wasn't wearing her usual designer glam. She was in a soft, oversized beige sweater, hugging her knees, looking small and vulnerable. Her eyes were red-rimmed, glistening with tears that didn't quite fall, but caught the ring light perfectly. I didn't want to do this, she whispered to the camera, her voice cracking just enough to break hearts. But I know you guys have noticed I haven't been posting. The truth is, my family is in crisis. My sister Catherine, we love her so much, but she's sick. She's spiraling. We tried to have a quiet intervention today. A brunch. Just to talk. But she wouldn't even open the door. She's paranoid. She thinks we're enemies. And it just breaks me because we might have to make some really hard legal decisions to protect her from herself. The comments were scrolling by. So fast they blurred. You're such a good sister. Praying for her. Mental illness is so hard on the family. Do whatever it takes to save her. V. I watched, and for a second, I felt the old urge to scream. To defend myself. To type in the chat that she was lying. But then the forensic part of my brain took over. I leaned back and dissected the performance. This wasn't just lying. It was something far more sophisticated. It was the concern troll tactic. You see, the most dangerous enemy isn't the one who screams at you in public. It's the one who cries for you. Concern trolling is a weaponized form of empathy. By framing her aggression as protection and her greed as burden, Vanessa stripped me of my right to be angry. If I fought back now, I wouldn't look like a victim standing up for herself. I would look like a deranged patient, attacking her caregiver. She wasn't just stealing my assets. She was preemptively stealing my credibility. She was using the language of love to construct a cage. It is the ultimate gaslight because it recruits the rest of the world to help hold the door shut. I closed the tab. The anger in my chest was cold. Now. Solid and heavy like a stone. Okay. Vanessa. I said to the empty room. You want to play narrative, let's look at the data. I opened a new window and logged into my personal cloud accounts. If they were claiming I had a history of confusion and missed obligations, they had to have manufactured a paper trail. I pulled up my digital calendar for the last 6 months. At first glance, it looked like a disaster zone. Missed dental appointments. Forgotten client meetings. Lunches I had supposedly scheduled and then ghosted. I stared at the screen. I didn't remember scheduling a lunch with Adrian on a Tuesday in March. I definitely didn't remember missing a tax deadline in April. I clicked on the metadata for the entry created by user Catherine. Modified by user admin. I checked the login history. My stomach turned. There were login from a device I didn't own. An iPad Pro located at an IP address in the historic district. Vanessa's house. It wasn't dementia. It was Adrian. He had been logging into my synced calendar for months. Quietly deleting reminders. Moving appointments by an hour, so I'd show up late. And planting events I never agreed to so I'd look like I forgot them. He hadn't just watched me struggle. He had engineered the stumbling blocks. Every time I had apologized for being late, every time I had questioned my own memory, he had been there smiling, telling me I was just stressed and overworked. It was a digital lobotomy. They had been hacking my reality one calendar invite at a time. I took a screenshot. Then another. I wasn't just finding errors anymore. I was building a case file. They wanted to prove I had lost my mind. Instead, they had just given me the roadmap to their own destruction. By evening, the sky over the coast had turned the color of a fresh bruise. The storm we'd been warned about all week finally made landfall, lashing rain against my windows with a violence that made the glass rattle in the frames. I was sitting at my kitchen island staring at the evidence of Adrian's digital gaslighting when a frantic pounding on my front door cut through the noise of the wind. It wasn't the rhythmic knock of a delivery driver or the heavy fist of a process server. It was desperate. Irregular. I checked the security feed on my phone. A small figure was huddled on my porch, drenched and shivering next to a bicycle that had been thrown carelessly onto the lawn. I unlocked the deadbolt and pulled the door open. Sophia stood there, water streaming off her raincoat. Her helmet clutched in white-knuckled hands. She looked less like my 16-year-old niece and more like a refugee from a war zone. Her eyes were wide, rimmed with red, darting around as if she expected her parents to materialize from the shadows of the storm. "Aunt Catherine," she whispered, her teeth chattering. "They don't know I'm here. Please don't tell them I'm here. Get inside," I said, pulling her out of the rain. I didn't ask questions yet. I got her a towel and a mug of hot tea. I watched her hands shake as she tried to lift the cup. For years, Vanessa had kept Sophia at a distance, using her as a prop for family photos, but rarely letting us bond. I looked at her now, really looked at her, and I didn't see a teenager. I saw a hostage. I had to sign it, she blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. Mom made me. She wrote it out and told me if I didn't sign it, she'd take away my college fund. She said you were sick and we had to help you. But the words, they were lies. Aunt Catherine, they made me write that you screamed at me, that you threw things. I know you didn't. I'm sorry. She was talking about the affidavit, the witness statement claiming I was dangerous. My own sister had held her daughter's future ransom to extort a lie. Rage, hot and blinding, flared in my chest. But I pushed it down. Sophia didn't need my anger. She needed a sanctuary. I know you didn't mean it, Sophia, I said softly. You're safe here. I brought you something, she said. She reached into her soaked backpack and pulled out a tablet. Dad thinks he's so smart with his passwords, but he uses the same one for everything. He left this recording on the cloud. She pressed play. Adrian's voice filled my kitchen, tiny and cruel. We need to push the timeline. That old witch is tougher than she looks. If the judge grants the emergency order on Tuesday, how fast can we liquidate the manor? Then Vanessa's voice, calm and chillingly pragmatic. I already talked to the developer. He has the cash ready. Once she's in the facility, she won't even know it's gone. We just have to make sure Sophia keeps her mouth shut. That girl is getting too soft. If she talks. Adrian laughed, a sound that made my skin crawl. We'll just say she's crazy like her aunt. It runs in the family. Right. The recording ended. The silence in the kitchen was heavier than the storm outside. I looked at Sophia. She was staring at her lap, shame burning her cheeks. And in that moment, the entire geometry of the war changed. Up until now, I had been fighting to save my assets. My home. My reputation. I had been fighting for survival. But looking at this terrified girl who had braved a hurricane to bring me the truth, I realized I was fighting for something much more fragile. This is the shield of innocence. It's the moment you realize that the narcissist isn't just hurting you. They are grooming the next generation to be either victims or accomplices. Vanessa wasn't just stealing a house. She was stealing Sophia's moral compass. She was teaching her daughter that love is transactional, and that truth is whatever you can pay someone to believe. If I lost this battle, Sophia would be trapped in that house with them, watching them celebrate their victory, learning that cruelty wins. I couldn't let that be her lesson. I wasn't just her aunt anymore. I was the only thing standing between her and a lifetime of becoming them. I reached out and covered her hand with mine. My voice was steady, stripped of all fear. You did good, Sophia. I said. You just gave me the weapon I needed to end this. And I promise you, they are never going to threaten you again. I took the tablet. It wasn't just evidence. It was a declaration of war. By midnight, Marcus had returned to my kitchen, shaking the rain off his coat. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from fear to the cold, electrified focus of a war room. Sophia was asleep in the guest room, exhausted by her bravery, while Marcus and I dissected the data from Adrian's tablet. We found the smoking gun in a hidden folder, labeled Project Phoenix. It wasn't a plan. It was a done deal. Vanessa and Adrian hadn't just talked about selling Blackwood Manor. They had already taken the money. On the screen was a signed pre-construction agreement with a developer notorious for skirting zoning laws, complete with a non-refundable $500,000 wire deposit. The contract demanded demolition within 48 hours of title transfer, with triple damage penalties if access wasn't delivered. That was why they were rushing. They'd already spent the money likely to settle Adrian's debts. And now they were trapped. Marcus wanted to expose the fraud in court. But I refused. Court would take months. I didn't want to beat Vanessa. I wanted to finish her. So I gave her exactly what she wanted. Buried in my parents' records was a federal conservation easement signed decades ago in exchange for tax relief. The manor was permanently protected. No demolition. No subdivision. No commercial use ever. Violation meant federal seizure. Vanessa had sold a property she legally could not deliver. At the hearing, I played the role she'd written for me: fragile, defeated, compliant. I agreed to a temporary conservatorship over the estate only, and handed her full control of Blackwood Manor. She left the courthouse triumphant, already calling the demolition crew. The bulldozers arrived on schedule. So did the federal agents, as Vanessa live-streamed her fake grief, celebrating the sale of the estate. The FBI and the Historical Preservation Trust shut the site down. The easement was enforced. The developer realized he'd been lied to. Arrests followed for wire fraud, conspiracy, and attempted destruction of protected heritage property. The fallout was swift and total. Lawsuits, bankruptcy, prison time. Vanessa lost everything. Weeks later, she came begging at my gate. I didn't let her in. A year ago, I would have saved her. Now I understood the difference between currency and legacy. Currency is loud and burns fast. Legacy is quiet and enduring. You don't own it. You protect it. Sophia and I stood on the restored porch of Blackwood Manor. The danger gone. The future intact. Sometimes the smartest way to win isn't to fight. It's to let your enemy step on their own land.